Good evening, DeGent Nation. This is the Week 7 edition of the Distinguished DeGents podcast. I am your solo host tonight, Money Mansmann. If you didn't get a chance to listen to our video, our Week 6 recap video, my co-host, Big Bucks Beyta, is out in the mecca of sports gambling. That's right, the city of Las Vegas. So he's enjoying some much needed time away in the sun. He is taking a bye week for this week, and thus, in order to put out some content and give you some picks for week 7, I decided to do a truncated sort of video. Obviously, it will not be as long and as detailed as our usual breakdown, but in this situation, just wanted to put out my picks for week 7. And of course, once Big Bucks Beyta returns for week 8, we'll be back live in studio. So certainly check us out on the Harvard Discussions podcast and our alternate YouTube channel. And without any further ado, I've already gone over the Thursday games, so I'm just going to move right along the list. Like I said, give my initial impressions, give my bets for the Week 7 games, and we'll call it a night. So, first game, as you could see on the ledger, all odds, of course, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Detroit Lions at the Dallas Cowboys. You see the numbers there. The current spread is Dallas Cowboys -7. And my look at the game is that the Cowboys have gone and covered 7 straight against the Lions, and the Lions have also been dreadful on the road, losing 11 of 12 there. Looks like Dak Prescott may be back in the lineup, may be playing, and I know the Lions are coming off the bye. My concern is specifically the talented Dallas defense and whether or not the Lions will be able to go and score against that defense. No, the defense kind of had a disappointing outing against the Eagles. Certainly could see them bouncing back. And, the Cowboys in Jerry World against a 1-4 Lions team that's coming off the bye, probably playing one of the best defenses it's faced all year. Kind of very hard to sort of back the Lions here. I think Dallas has won 4 straight games against the Lions. I think this is going to be 5. Definitely like Dallas to win. And 7, even though it's a particularly big number, I could see Jared Goff maybe turning the ball over a couple times, maybe getting strip sacks. So not my strongest bet, but if I had to choose, Dallas -7. We'll move on to the next game on the ledger, the Indianapolis Colts traveling to Tennessee in what looks to be a crucial division matchup in the AFC South. As you can see now, the Titans are the home favorite at -2.5, -120. Looking at that game, what's interesting is that the Titans have covered and won their last 4 against the Colts, and they've also won 9 of their last 10 against the AFC South. What I expect this to be is a very tough, physical, sort of grinded out AFC South game. I'm not sure about the status of the Colts running backs as of yet in this week, but we know that both Hines and Taylor were out last week coming off injuries. Titans are coming off the bye. There was a very emotional sort of last-second win by Indianapolis at home last week, and in a tough sort of game, I think I lean with the home team. I lean with the history in this case. Not that the Titans have been particularly good, but in a close sort of game that goes to the division, and especially considering the fact that the Titans are at home, I lean Titans -2.5. So that's really it for that game. Next is one of the sort of curious games that are really left on the ledger for this week. You have the New York Giants on the road facing Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a -3-point favorite at home. And mind you, this isn't a London game. Three-point favorite at home against the Giants, despite the fact that the Giants are 5-1 and coming with a big win at home against Baltimore. long story short, I'm going to make this game, probably by default, my dog of the week. Um, when you look at what the Giants have done with the personnel they've used, when you look at what they've done under Brian Dable, it's very difficult to envision them as a 3-point underdog against a team that basically gift wrapped the game away to Indianapolis last week, despite being ahead, I think, at one point 20-3 and blowing that lead and ending up losing that game late. Um, it's really hard to really see why the Giants are an underdog in this particular game. And I know Daniel Jones hasn't been the best quarterback this year. I know the numbers with Jacksonville's defense against the run are relatively good, but I just think that the Giants, at the very least, can go and cover the 3 points. And I probably think that this is one of those games where you look at it in the wrong team's favorite. I actually think the Giants, based on the body of work this year, should be favored. Not really sure why the Jaguars, who have not played their best football, are favored in this game. And especially considering the fact that the Jaguars go to London next week to play the Broncos. Kind of an odd, sort of weird spot for them to be a favorite against the 5-1 team. So this could be one of those trap games. The number does look really too good to be true. It looks like there's something fishy about this particular number. But whatever. If I have to choose, I will wade into the long grass. I will take the Giants +3 as my dog of the week. Moving on, we move to the next game, and this is one of those key divisional games involving two teams that need a win. The Cleveland Browns, coming off an embarrassing loss to the Patriots last week, they take on the Baltimore Ravens. As you can see there, the current spread is at -6 in favor of the Ravens. And when we look at the history in this game, the Ravens have covered 5 straight against the Browns, and the Browns have lost 5 of their last 6 road games. When I'm looking at this game and I'm looking at, key stats to sort of give me an indication of who I may want to bet in this game, how I look at it that the Baltimore Ravens are primarily a running team, and they're going up against the defense who is 28th against the run in average rushing yards given up per game. They just gave up 2 touchdowns to Ramondre Stevenson. Now they're going to have to deal with not only the Baltimore backfield, but also Lamar Jackson, who can run as well. I'm always sort of a little bit hesitant to play teams whose opponents are coming off sort of embarrassing losses, but Browns lost 2 straight at home. Now they're going on the road where looks like I accidentally clicked the screen the wrong way. Cleveland's coming into a situation where now they're playing on the road in Baltimore against a team that they haven't had great success in a place where maybe their success hasn't been too great. I don't like the situation that the Browns find themselves in. I don't like the fact that their passing offense may not be able to take advantage of a Baltimore secondary that has not been particularly good all year. Baltimore as well is coming off a tough loss last week. They're 3-3. They need a win. I think they're the better team. Less than a touchdown. Baltimore Ravens -6 is my pick for that game. Next game on the docket is another one of those, I guess, interesting matchups. And there's a couple this week involving teams that don't really play each other all that much. You have the Atlanta Falcons, who are 6-0 against the spread. They're going to be taking on the Cincinnati Bengals, who are at home this week. Cincinnati -6.5 point favorite at home, although they're only laying -6, so odds are maybe tilted a little bit towards the Falcons. So you could say maybe 6.25, a little bit between 6 and 6.5 there. And looking at the matchup, it's on the one hand, you have Atlanta that is a top 5 rushing team against the defense that I think is ranked 25th against the run. Uh, and you have a Cincinnati offense that has been good passing the ball against one of the worst pass defenses in the league. Now, last week, San Francisco could not capitalize on those particular matchups in Atlanta. Jimmy Garoppolo did not have a good game at quarterback. The Cincinnati Bengals are coming off a good win against the Saints. Definitely got their offense moving in that particular game. I think the question really, and this is one of those split games for me where I do think that the Cincinnati Bengals will win, although they haven't been as good as at home as they have been on the road. And thus, with the 6.5 number, this is going to be a split game for me where if I had to choose, I'm playing Cincinnati Bengals money line because I do think they will pull out the win. But at 6.5, I like the Falcons to maybe go and cover this game. They've shown themselves to be a resilient, scrappy team. They can run the ball against the Cincinnati Bengals defense. They can run the clock down. They can keep the game lower scoring than maybe one would expect. And definitely, I mean, this is one of those games where I think if you like the under and you like Atlanta, or really if you like Atlanta, you should like the under. That may be a correlated sort of parlay. Atlanta Falcons 6.5, under 47.5. Because my thought would be, if you like the Atlanta side, that it's possible Atlanta goes, runs the clock in Cincinnati. Could be a surprisingly close, maybe 19-16 sort of game that could be decided by a late field goal. So that's my handicap on that one. Not one of my strongest games. Definitely a game that Big Bucks Beyta would be into a lot more, considering the fact that he's a much bigger fan of the Falcons than I am. That's been his team. He's won with them a few weeks this season. So definitely miss him for this particular handicap. But I move on to the next game solo. And now I come to the bane of my existence. And the bane of my existence has been Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. Bet on them for 3 straight weeks. And for 3 straight weeks, they've bedeviled me. Well, now they're on the road after an embarrassing home loss to the Jets to face the Washington Commanders, who are coming off, the best thing you could say about it is a win on Thursday Night Football. You see the odds there. Green Bay is a -4.5 point favorite on the road, laying -114. So the odds are shaded a little bit in their direction. Washington, they're only laying -106 at 4.5 points as a home dog. And I mean, I'm really trying to talk myself out of falling into this Green Bay trap again. When you look at what the Green Bay Packers have done for the last 3 weeks, their defense has been utterly, utterly atrocious. Can't stop the run. Can't get off the field. Dumb penalties. Blown assignments. They have been the biggest, to me, the biggest disappointment in football to start the year, to tell you to God's honest truth. I know Tampa Bay as well, but Tom Brady's 44 years old, going through personal issues, with the divorce matter. So you could at least make an excuse for Tampa Bay's shortcomings this season. The Packers' defense has been terrible. Their offense is just, their receivers can't get any separation at all. there are times when the Packers can run the ball well, and then they just go away from it. The London game, they were running the ball well. They looked good. They stopped running. Last week was a complete abomination. Aaron Rodgers looks like he's completely forgotten how to play football. It's an embarrassing sort of performance from him. In essence, it's just I'm kind of at an absolute loss with this Green Bay Packers team. I really am, because you look at the performances that they've brought the past 3 weeks, and it's been atrocious. And they really could have, potentially lost that game to Tampa Bay as well. On the other hand, I can't get away from this Packers team. I really can't get away from this Packers team. Just because Washington now, Carson Wentz is out hurt, potential 4 to 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. You're looking at Taylor Heineke coming in for his first game as quarterback this year. You look at a team that, let's be honest, they beat the Bears on Thursday Night Football by 5 points. They couldn't do anything on offense. Their defense wasn't particularly good, although they were able to get some key stops in the red zone to stop the Bears in a game that maybe the Bears should have won. The Washington Commanders are one of the worst teams in football. They've been surpassed by basically every team in their division now. This is just a dreadful sort of game, a dreadful joke game. And it's one of those things where you just throw up your hands and say, how could the Packers lose this game? They need a win. Rodgers has been terrible. The defense has been terrible. They're under siege. They're playing a bad team on the road. I get it's on the road. Maybe that's exactly what Green Bay needs to kind of get away, find themselves, get a win. I'm not saying it's going to be pretty. I'm not saying the Packers will look particularly inspired doing so. But if I have to make a choice here, I can't believe I'm going to say it. Give me the Packers once again, -4.5. It's like I can't quit this team. I really can't quit this team as much as I want to. And Big Bucks Beyta would definitely be giving me shit if he heard that handicap. But thankfully he's in Vegas and, is doing his thing there. Speaking of horrible games, we now come to the next one on the ledger. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the ghost of the Carolina Panthers. Panthers are a 10.5 point underdog at home, -108, so slightly shaded in favor of Tampa Bay at -112 on the spread. God, what do you even say about this Panthers team? 1-12 in their last 13 games. If you remember, I thought they might have been able to cover last week, even against a depleted sort of weak sauce, pathetic Rams team. They weren't able to do shit. Now they're playing at home against a team that has covered 4 in a row against them. My thought on this one, too, is who's even going to play quarterback for the Panthers? Baker Mayfield's out, could be P.J. Walker, although he was benched in favor of Jacob Eason. Sam Darnold's coming back. Does it matter? Does anything about this game matter? Carolina Panthers traded Robbie Anderson, who's getting in fights on with the coaching staff. Tampa Bay can't score. Tom Brady's cursing at his offensive lineman. This is just a mess of a game in the worst division in football, the NFC South. And at the end of the day, it's one of those games where, God, definitely on the money line. I don't know how you can't bet Tampa Bay after that loss to Pittsburgh, because you feel like they definitely need a win to revitalize what they're doing. But on the spread, it's, on the one hand, 10.5 points for this Tampa Bay offense that couldn't score 20 points against one of the worst defenses in football without T.J. Watt. It's hard to really justify putting 10.5 points on them. But then, in the alternative, how can you justify any spread bet on Carolina, considering how bad they've been. And especially Tampa Bay's beaten them by over 23 straight games. Tampa Bay's had their number. It's almost impossible to really go and make a compelling argument to justify putting money on the Carolina Panthers. I mean, they're basically as close to auto fade as you could get. And I don't know if I'll be betting this game myself, but if I have to choose, it's Tampa Bay minus 10.5 by default, just because I have no idea who's going to start at quarterback. I have no idea how they're going to look for Carolina. I have no idea if this Carolina team's even interested in playing the season anymore. Kind of at a loss with them, so there's really nothing else to do but to go and you know, bet Tampa Bay in this particular circumstance. Now to a game I like a little bit more. We have the Houston Texans traveling to Las Vegas, where our boy Big Bucks Beyta is currently living it up now. The Raiders are minus 7-point favorite at home, as you could see, minus 108. Strangely enough, the Texans have covered their last 7 games against AFC opponents, so I'm getting a little bit off track here by liking the Raiders, and that is my pick for this game. I do like the Raiders. Also, too, Houston has gone and played pretty competitive football, to tell you the truth. Beat Jacksonville outright, covered against the Broncos earlier in the year, covered first game of the season as well against the Colts, getting that tie. So they have had some competitive games. I just think this is a matter of the Raiders just being the better team, and I think that's why the line is where it is. I just think the Raiders are better. I think the Raiders definitely need a win to stay competitive in that AFC West. They're coming off the bye. Houston's defense, especially their rush defense, hasn't been particularly good. Josh Jacobs, the last 2 weeks he's played, has definitely started to round into form and start playing better football. So, the Raiders with Hunter Renfrow back, with Devontae Adams, and with the addition of Josh Jacobs, I definitely think are the more talented team in this case, and basically need a win in order to stay competitive in the AFC West. Again, like what Houston's doing, they've been playing competitive football, but I'm concerned about Davis Mills on the road in Las Vegas against a Raiders team that I think is more talented than their record shown, and has lost a couple of close games this season. I mean, when you look at it, they lost that heartbreaker to Arizona. They lost by a point to Kansas City. Lost by 5 to the Chargers week 1. So there's a few instances where if a couple balls bounced a different way, the Raiders might have had a much better record than they do now. So yeah, I think this is one where the Raiders can get a big win at home, and I think they do get a big win. And I would not play it above 7, to tell you the truth, just because Houston can be a scrappy team and keep it competitive. But as it stands now, Vegas Raiders minus 7. Next game on the docket is questionable just because of the injury situation with Denver. And, of course, we're going to miss our weekly Big Bucks Beyta rant about the Denver Broncos. Of course, as you see, my team, the Buffalo Bills, coming off that great win last week, isn't playing. So no Bills rant this week. Much more mellow, sort of straightforward episode. But we have the Jets and the Broncos, as you see. Broncos are basically a pick 'em at this point. Minus 110, minus 1. Money line shortly in their favor, minus 116 to minus 102. And the big question for this game to me is really whether or not this Broncos defense is going to be good enough against Zach Wilson and the Jets offense to counteract some of the questions that you have with the Broncos offense. The word is that Russell Wilson may have sustained a serious sort of hamstring injury in the game against the Chargers. Don't know what his status is going to be. Hasn't been announced as of yet. Definitely raises questions, and I think that's why the line has gone from 2.5 to 1. I think there's some questions about Russell Wilson's health and an offense that has struggled already. Say what you will about Russell Wilson, and I've been pretty vocal on Twitter and Big Bucks as well about the fact that I think he's essentially been stealing money from the Broncos with some of the poor play that he's put on film up to now. I would take him over Brett Rippon and whoever else the Denver Broncos have in reserve. So, say what you will about Russell Wilson, I'd rather roll with him than Brett Rippon. And thus, the question's going to be, in a close sort of pick'em game, is the Broncos' defense that much better than the Jets' offense, where the issues on Denver's offense will be nullified? This could be a game where maybe you want to wait to see what the quarterback news is before you play it, and maybe see if the line shifts against the Broncos to the extent there's an announcement that Wilson isn't going to play. Because I would be tempted to take the Broncos at a higher price, maybe on a teaser, 7.5, 7 points, just because of their defense. I think their defense can keep it close. And they've covered, I think, 5 of the last 6 against the Jets, so they've had some success against this Jets team previously. But yeah, it's kind of hard to back the Broncos, especially against a Jets team that's been playing better at this point. So with all the information I have, there's really no need for an elongated sort of handicap here or an elongated Denver Broncos rant. There's really not much else to say except the fact that I would definitely lean towards the Jets. And you see there the over-under 38.5. Like I said, I don't play many of those myself. That's more something that Big Bucks Beyta is into, the over-unders. I just think in this game it sort of shows you what Vegas is looking at in terms of the possibilities of scoring this game. And it's probably going to be a type of game that's going to be very low scoring, regardless of who the quarterback is. And thus, if there's a big line shift one way or another, you'd want to be mindful of that. Next game, again, this is one of those ones where it's two teams that really don't play each other all that much. You have the Seattle Seahawks on the road taking on the Chargers after that Monday night win. As you could see, Chargers minus 6.5, minus 106 there. And when you look at this game, my big thought is this game gets decided by Chargers offense versus Seahawks defense, and Seahawks offense versus Chargers defense. Which one of those matchups can be better? Now, I know, Money Mansmann, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Duh, that's called football, of course. What my thing is that both offenses have been much better than the opposing defenses they're going to be facing. The Seattle Seahawks defense has been brutal. They're ranked one of the worst in the league. I think they're pretty much in the bottom 5 in every category. You look at the Chargers defense, not much better, although they were able to stymie the Broncos offense after that first quarter. And the question is really going to be which one of these defenses can make enough plays to give their team the chance to win, and which offense can be better and make more plays to kind of outscore the other one. And I think ultimately when I look at it, the Chargers just seem to be a better version of the Seahawks with an offense that's better and a defense that's better, even though like the offense that they have is good and the defense is not good. I think their defense is not as bad as the Seahawks and their offense is better. I'll tell you what, like, you have to respect the hell out of what Geno Smith has done. You really do. The guy basically is written off, and Pete Carroll too. I mean, let me just take a minute not to get too distracted from the handicap to just say how great the Seahawks have really been this year. When you look at, I think they were projected 5.5 wins, and to see how they've responded with Russell Wilson being traded, with Pete Carroll basically people saying that he should retire, that he's washed up. For them to be as competitive as they are with no defense whatsoever, with a guy who's basically been a journeyman quarterback, who's playing lights out, who played another solid game last week to beat the Cardinals at home. I really like this Seahawks team. I love this Seahawks team. I've bet them quite a bit early on in the year. This is the type of game, though, unfortunately, I think sometimes Cinderella wakes up and she finds herself back in the rags. And I think this is a game where the Chargers, and I'm not particularly as high on the Chargers as some other people. I thought they would look better against Denver last week. They didn't. I thought that the Chargers were going to lose the game to Cleveland, and they almost did. I'm not sold on Brandon Staley. I still don't think he's a good coach. But at the end of the day, I can't lie with talent. And if Keenan Allen comes back too, that's going to be another boost for the Chargers. So, sadly, it kind of hurts because I really like this Seahawks team. But if I have to choose, I'm choosing the Chargers minus 6.5. The next one here, and there's been a big move since I handicapped it. You have the Kansas City Chiefs on the road taking on the San Francisco 49ers. The Chiefs have just gone down to a minus 2.5 point favorite, albeit at minus 118. So, in looking at this game, the Chiefs have actually won 14 of their last 15 games against the NFC. And I actually think that this is a matchup that bodes pretty well for them. The reason being this. I get that the Niners have a top 5 defense. I think they're second against the run and pass. The Bills might be first now. I'm not entirely sure if that's the case. But regardless, San Francisco has a top 5 defense, and the thought may be, well, how could you say that the matchup bodes well when Kansas City is a team that relies on high-flying, explosive offense? And the reason I give is because when you look at some of the teams like Philadelphia last week, when you look at the Bills, when you look at what the Chiefs did last week against the Bills, when you look at the teams that are high flying, the Chargers last week, these good offenses will find a way in this NFL with all the penalties, with all the roughing the passers, with all the defensive holdings and the illegal contacts, all of those different things, they are going to find a way to get their points. Teams like Kansas City are going to find a way to get their points. Make no mistake about that. They're going to get their points. So, knowing that, the question becomes, can Kansas City's defense do enough to hold? I mean, at the end of the day, that was the story last week. The Bills' offense doing enough, and the Bills' defense doing enough to kind of hold. That's why that game ended the way it was. And the big advantage in this case is that the Chiefs are actually a top 5 defense against the run. They haven't been good against the pass, but they have held their own against the run up to now. And as we know, the 49ers are a predominantly run-based team. Now, it's a close game. It's probably one of those game-of-the-week type games. Probably, 2 of the better teams that are playing each other this week. Originally, this was going to be a split game because the number was 3. It was going to be a play San Francisco plus 3, Chiefs money line, because I do think the Chiefs will pull this game out. I do still have trust in Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid to figure out a way to get it done. But now, considering that the spread has gone down to 2.5, that's now going to be Chiefs 2.5, Chiefs money line. Like I said, a lot of respect for what San Francisco's done at home. By no means is this a situation where I'm off the Niners bandwagon, so to speak, even though they had a tough game last week with a lot of their defenders banged up, losing to what I think is an inferior, albeit scrappy, Falcons team. But at the end of the day, I do think Mahomes finds a way. I think Kansas City is one of the top 3 teams in the league. So, with that said, Chiefs -2.5. Chiefs money line. Excuse me. And now finally we get to the primetime games on the slate, the last two games. Game one, this is going to be my fade of the week by default, just because I didn't really have a lot of options. A lot of the best teams, I think the Eagles, Vikings, Bills, basically like three of the top teams in the league are all on bye. So it's kind of hard to fade, have a fade of the week when all of the best teams are all on bye. So kind of a tough thing to do there. But this will be my fade of the week. Pittsburgh Steelers on the road taking on the Miami Dolphins. Miami, 7-point favorite at home. I will go and name this my fade of the week in favor of the Miami Dolphins simply because Pittsburgh's coming off a big win. The Dolphins are coming off 3 straight losses with Tua Tagovailoa set to return. And I think that could be a big addition in a game where the Steelers' defense still has not shown themselves to be particularly good, despite the fact that they won last week. Pittsburgh still only has 1 win, with TJ Watt not playing. I know we made a joke about that on the recap video, basically saying that was our stat we bring up every week. So yes, the Pittsburgh Steelers finally do have a win in a game where TJ Watt doesn't play. But in this particular case, I think Miami's offense, with Tua coming back, may just be too strong for Pittsburgh. Not really sure what Pittsburgh's quarterback situation is. The Miami defense actually held its own against Minnesota for most of the game. And Miami, before losing to Minnesota, had won 8 straight at home. So they have shown themselves to be a good home team. It's a primetime game that maybe shouldn't be a primetime game. But regardless, my fade of the week is in favor of the Miami Dolphins, -7, as I think their offense is due for a big rebound and can certainly go and win that game. And again, all credit to what the rookie Pickett done, and all credit to Pittsburgh, what they were able to do last week. But like I said, I don't really envision Pittsburgh winning 2 in a row, and I don't envision them going to Miami with questions surrounding the quarterback and whether Pickett will play or not, and being able to stop the Miami Dolphins offense. Although, of course, my one caveat with this, my one concern, is the possibility that Tua gets injured again, because another Tua injury brings back Teddy Bridgewater or Skylar Thompson, neither one of whom I had any faith in at all based on their performances the last 2 weeks. So just be mindful of that. And then finally, yes, you may be wondering, gee, I haven't heard what Money Mansmann's best bet this week will be. Did I miss it? No, you didn't, because here it comes. Chicago Bears on the road at New England. New England, a -7.5 point favorite, shaded in their favor, -114. And that's right, folks. Best bet of the week, New England Patriots, -7.5. Let's see. Reason why? Bill Belichick against first or second year quarterbacks. His record's incredible, both straight up and ATS against first and second year quarterbacks. His defenses tend to flummox those rookie and second year quarterbacks who are inexperienced. And if you're aware, Justin Fields is still trying to figure things out. Offensive line was not good at all against Washington. Chicago's also a one-dimensional team, and we saw last week with Cleveland what Bill Belichick could do against, a one-dimensional team. So, having said that, definitely a situation where I really, really, really like the New England Patriots. Not to mention, too, the Chicago Bears rush defense has been 29th in the NFL in average yards given up. Ramondre Stevenson's just coming off a 2-touchdown game against Cleveland. I'm expecting more of the same from him. More grinding the rock. And regardless of who New England's quarterback is, I don't expect them to be asked to do too much. I expect a lot of running, a lot of grinding the clock, and potentially turnovers from Justin Fields against this defense. And especially, I know that Chicago has a top 5 running game as well. But we've seen this a number of times where Bill Belichick will just go and refuse to let you win in the way you want to win. And we've seen this multiple times. If you're going to go and you're going to win the game by throwing to Travis Kelce, he's going to make you throw to Mecole Hardman. If you're going to beat him by running the ball with Derrick Henry, he's going to force Ryan Tannehill to beat him. And I think it's the same thing here. He is going to force Justin Fields to have to sit in the pocket, throw the ball to beat him. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. If Bill Belichick wins this game at home, he's going to go into second place all time in the career wins. Monday Night Football, perfect time for him to do that against the bad Bears team. Best bet, New England Patriots, -7.5. So, in conclusion, that's going to do it, folks. We've gone over all of the remaining games in this sort of solo quick recap video. Thank you so much for listening. Like I said, just wanted to put something out to keep it going as we've done picks for the first 6 weeks. Like Big Bucks Beyta said, he may or may not post his picks on Twitter later in the week. So you could kind of get his thoughts in terms of, who his best bets are and who he's looking at this week. But hopefully you found my handicaps and some of the information I gave helpful. Other than that, if you like any of our content, please subscribe. Harbor Discussions channel, Distinguished DeGents channel. Check us out on Twitter at DeGents Podcast. Other than that, have a good night, DeGents. Wish you the best of luck, Week 7.